Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Known as the coach's coach, Charlotte Blair is someone who believes in living each day to the fullest, aiming for 10 out of 10 types of days every day. As an International Coaching Federation professional certified coach and one of Australia's most experienced Gallup Accredited Strengths Coaches, she loves helping people find their passion and purpose and play to their strengths. As the founder of the Strength Partners, Charlotte works with individuals, teams and organisations across the world to help them discover and use their strengths and meet their goals. She's dedicated to helping people get their career unstuck and love work again like she did herself. She has a new book which is just in this area called Career Unstuck, outlining a clear path to career fulfilment. And I warmly welcome Charlotte to the Politics of Everything.
Thank you very much for having me.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since day one of the Politics of Everything, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one solution to make the process quick and painless, the way it should be for those of us who just love great content and want to get our ideas out into the world. If you know me, I'm obsessed with quality in terms of my guests, my sound, and everything about my show has to be great the first time. I'm time poor. It's so easy to use Zencastr. I'm not tech savvy and you don't need to be either. There's nothing to download. Just click on the link and off we go. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-productions now in their toolkit, you don't have to leave your browser to get that episode done, and done fast. I have a special offer for you, and hopefully you can experience what I have with Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my VIP code, the Politics of Everything, all lowercase and one word, to get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. How good is that? I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Okay, young Charlotte, what did you want to be as a kid, and kind of did you get there?
I love this question, and reflecting back, I kind of go, well, maybe I sort of got there. So when I was at school, I either wanted to be a policewoman or a PE teacher. Being fairly dyslexic and not loving the education system, being a PE teacher meant having to go to university and doing more studying, so that kind of didn't quite happen. And I had a really expensive habit of horses, and I had to fund that. So I actually got out into the big wide world. Being a policewoman, no, didn't decide to venture off down that route. But I guess if you think about shaping where I am now, in a way, what I do when I'm coaching and facilitating, sometimes there's a little bit of teaching that goes on in there, but never in the PE field.
Oh, that's interesting to know. Thanks for playing along with that question. Obviously, the topic today is around, changing careers, and we know many people at many stages of their life will have different careers or different types of work, relationships. It could be starting businesses and then going back into corporate. It could be the opposite. How has changing careers evolved from your perspective over the time that you've been obviously in your working life, your career life? There was years ago people stayed in jobs for years or for life, whereas now we know that, the generations that are coming through now, the leaps into new jobs or sectors every few years seems pretty normal, and it's not necessarily frowned upon like it was when I was starting out my career, where I felt like if I had anything less than 2 years on my CV, I'd almost be blacklisted.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I remember reading a research piece by Gallup on how millennials want to work and live, and they came up with this list of millennials want purpose, not just a paycheck, and they want a boss, not just a coach, strengths, not weaknesses. And then actually a lot of people said, yeah, well, we want that too. Even the boomers wanted that. But, in their day, it was, yes, probably frowned upon to jump from job to job. And I actually love it when I talk with organizations, when I'm in doing programs, like NAB or Australia Post, and you find out their tenure has been 30 years or more. I love that But when you ask the question, what keeps them there, it's often the company, the culture, and the variety of jobs. So I think even if somebody is in a job for a long time, it's often the variety, and they got to do lots of different things in that job. If I think about my own journey, I guess what sort of triggered some changes for me, as I mentioned, I didn't go to university. I jumped out into the big wide world. I got a job in horses. I had lots of jobs on the side, waitressing. I did some temping. I found myself at Canon UK, initially in the kind of admin side, then moved into training a little bit. So that's that kind of circle back to training. And then I moved into sales, and I spent 7 years there. And then I found myself with the gift of the gab, or being told I had the gift of the gab. That's where I just like talking a lot. And found myself in telco sales and IT sales. And then it wasn't actually until I did the Stephen Covey's 7 Habits that got me talking about what my mission and purpose in life was. Did I then pursue a shift into something else? So I'm not sure that there's necessarily a new norm. I think it's different for everybody, but I do believe that it's less frowned upon when people are making lots of jumps. But I think if we kind of like circle back to why people make maybe lots of jumps, it's potentially because they're not fully engaged, they're not getting the opportunities to develop and grow like they would. So, kind of some of that research that Gallup did on millennials, people are looking at that and saying, yes, I want that too. And I do think the pandemic has had a sort of big impact on having people reevaluate what's important to them, and whether it's working from home or the type of job they do. So, yeah, I'm not sure there's a new norm yet, but I definitely think things are changing and evolving.
And just to further on that, I mean, I don't know anyone that plans to stay in a job for like 10 plus years anymore. I really don't. Like, maybe unless you're the CEO of the organization or the founder, most people don't sort of see that as a sign of, something they aspire to, that I speak to. So I think that's the reality now.
I think it is. I think the one thing I find sad, and this might be controversial, is when somebody says, oh, in order to make partner, or in order to get this role at, KPMG or a Big Four or something like that, I have to stay here longer. And me personally, I think that's a little bit sad. I think if you've got the skills, the talent, the willingness to learn, is tenure really important in being able to, do what you want to do
great work.
Yeah,
it's interesting you say that, but then I guess it comes into things like experience, and of course it's culture. So if that's the culture of an organization, and it is about mileage and having certain, I guess, KPIs that you meet before you can achieve that, maybe that's just part of some of those organizations, ways of doing business, if you like.
I think it is. Watching the telly this morning and, Sky News of what's going on in the US, you look and go, gosh, look, it's all white older men going into the politics. Why is that type of thing? But
still,
we're not there to
very
talk about
old
that
white
today.
Men. We digress. I like this idea of purpose at work. I probably, the former journalist in me always cringes at buzzwords, and it does feel a little bit like purpose is a bit of a buzzword. Is it always necessary to do your best work, to feel aligned, to be happy in your job or your career? Surely this is sometimes a life stage or even a degree of privilege thing, if you like. Like, you've paid your house off. You can find your purpose. You don't have to, like you say, do the hours of the job that's necessary to climb that corporate ladder. Sometimes I think, for me personally, I think about purpose, and I am a deep thinker. But do I love what I'm doing all day, every day? Definitely not. And I run my own business. So there you go.
You're right. I think it is a buzzword, or people can cringe at that word, and it doesn't need to be this sort of big grandiose statement.
Like, you're going to have, exactly. Like, you wake up every day bouncing in a bed, and you talked about 10 out of 10 days. I get that, but not every day is going to be one of those, surely.
No, but I love asking the question of people that I coach and work with, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love your job? And love can be a contentious word as well. Some people are like, love. I don't know about
well, some people don't like that word, do they?
Correct.
Like, particularly,
correct.
I'm thinking, certain generations would find that too woo-woo.
Yeah, correct. So change the word love to whatever, like, enjoy, whatever you want. But I think when I ask that question, whatever the reply is and your number, you got to go, are you happy with that? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much you love your job? And if it's 8, are you happy with that 8? And if yes, great. If no, what can you do about it? But the amount of people that I have spoken to who say it's a 3 or a 4, and that's what prompted me to write the book, because I just think that's really sad. We work, over 80,000 hours in our lifetime. I think you have to at least, enjoy or connect with, what you're doing. So for some people, purpose is not necessary. And I like what you said about privilege. And even if I think about, you mentioned paying off your mortgage. When I was in IT sales, I wanted to earn as much money as I possibly could so that I could pay off my mortgage. And I remember when my children are younger, they're very late teens now. I remember my manager saying to me, well, Charlotte, what about career development? I'm like, I don't want any career development at the moment. I just want to focus on doing my job, going home, looking after my children, spending time with them. It wasn't probably until I moved to Australia, paid off the mortgage, that purpose came to mind a little bit more. And it, circled back to that COVID course that I went on of talking about what's your mission and purpose in life. And how do you want to be remembered at your 80th birthday party when people are, celebrating? The thought of somebody saying, oh, Charlotte's good fun, but works in IT, filled me with dread. So I kind of went, what is it that
Is it because of the cliche stereotypes that people just think that you're boring and dull?
Maybe. But also then I started to think about, well, what is it that I love about my job? What would I give myself out of 10 for the job? And I found myself feeling a little bit irrelevant in some of the things I did, filling out spreadsheets, filling out systems nobody ever looked at. What did a really great day at work look like to me? How could I do more of that? And that's what got me thinking about, do I want to make a career shift at this point? Do I want to be doing something different? If I love connecting with people, being with people, like it was a really weird scenario that when I thought about my best day at work was actually when I arranged a lunch over the Sydney Olympics where people brought their own dish of their country of origin together and people were connecting. And I loved just standing back, watching people connecting with each other. And I was like, ooh, how could I do more of this? And it's not necessarily about, I'm going to be an event planner, but it did get me sort of connecting back. Now, I think we circle back to, does it need to be purpose? No, but you've got to I think you do need to reflect and think back of going, how happy am I doing what I'm doing? If I'm not engaged and I'm watching the clock and I'm coming home and I'm whinging to my partner and my family that I don't love what I do, at least understanding what your values are and what that great day work looks like, what your purpose is, what your strengths are, kind of helps you. Do you know, research last year by Gallup found that over 80% of employees they surveyed were open to a new job or looking for a new job. And that's quite staggering.
Wow.
And when they researched, would
that be? I don't. Yes, I'm not. I was going to say, where does that sort of sit in terms of where that might have been a number of years ago? In terms of that number, like, is it not?
Well,
it was
last year's research. So Gallup being a polling company, it was last year's research. So yes, previously. It might be different reasons. Yeah. Yes, could have been as a result of COVID. But when then dug a bit further, people were saying, they were looking for more purpose in their work. And I think purpose is going to look different to different people. But
and that's the other thing. And there's not sort of like, one way to do it, is there? I think that's the thing. Purpose to me sometimes feels like a certain thing that, it's almost like happiness. It's semi-elusive, but it's sort of, if you're feeling mostly okay about it and you do feel like it's ticking enough boxes, surely that's enough. You know what I mean? I think sometimes obsessing about purpose can be a little bit like counterproductive in my experience.
Yeah, correct. I remember research Marcus Buckingham did, and he said he interviewed a load of chambermaids at one of the big hotel chains, and they felt that they were connected some way to purpose because they were enabling holidaymaker to have a great holiday by, leaving a little folded up towel beautifully on the kid's bed or, sort of creating a great experience for them. They felt that was something that they loved doing. Now, I wouldn't want to be a chambermaid. That wouldn't give me a sense of purpose, but it gave them a sense of purpose. I think back to work that I do with a company called Hologic. They are, one of the leading medical device organizations around women's health. Every single person in that organization is connected back to the company's purpose and feel like they're making a difference as well. Now, that might not be important to everybody, but it is to some people. And again, I think it comes back to identifying what's most important to you. And are you happy with a 5 out of 10 day, or do you strive for more of a 10 out of 10 day and therefore how might you go about doing that? Like we have this thing in our house over dinner. We sit there at dinner, and my son now says to me, on a scale of 1 to 10, Mum, how was your day? It might be an 8 out of 10.
Oh, there you go.
What would make it an even better day? And then we just explore what that looks like. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. And I think those conversations are really important for the next generation. How can people get unstuck, as we call it, or your book is sort of titles allude to, in work and life? I mean, work and life always integrated. I guess it's sort of a link on from this purpose question, because some people, the whole I work to live, not live to work kind of, bumper sticker from the 90s. I mean, that sort of always runs through my head. But for some people, that's very integrated. If they're feeling stuck at work, they might be feeling stuck in other areas of their life and vice versa. What's your sort of view on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it depends. I see more people that maybe have a family or a partner at home, and if you're miserable where you are and you feel stuck where you are, you probably take that home. And then what's the impact of that? Whether you're bottling it up and you never talk about your work, or whether you're sort of detached at home, or you're moaning that you hate your job, what's the impact of that? So I think there are linkages, but if we think back to how many hours of our life we are at work, I think there is some integration there. But when you think about, how you get unstuck, I think understanding why you're stuck in the first place is useful. Now, whether that be, what I refer to as the shitty boss or the bully boss or toxic culture that you're working with, or lack of freedom or autonomy in what you get to do. Maybe there's no growth and you love learning. You're an avid learner and you're not getting that growth. Maybe there's a little bit of burnout because you are working too hard. Maybe there's a little bit of imposter syndrome. So I think understanding what is keeping us stuck is the first place to sort of getting unstuck. I know I know in terms of research and talking to people, mindset can be a big one. Some people have different views around money, for instance, or I can't change my job, or I can't move from here because I've already sunk costs, for instance, into becoming an accountant, or I have to pay the mortgage, or I'm not qualified to do that. So a lot of people have beliefs that are not helping them. I think so, if we know why we're stuck, reevaluate our mindsets, get creative in imagining what could be possible. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, let's imagine what you would love to be doing. Understand what your values are. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's Know Your Why. That helps of connecting back to things like purpose. If purpose is too big a statement, your why maybe. What are you passionate about? What's most important to you at work? What are your non-negotiables? Then I am biased on this because I'm a strengths coach, but I think discovering your strengths is pretty critical to that, and knowing what you do.
What would be an example of our strengths? Because is it kind of what you do, or how, like you say, for example, is it as simplistic as I'm a great writer, so therefore I'm going to be a journalist? Is it that, or is it more your values and your strengths in that? So it might be empathy and those sorts of things. I mean, just to unpack that a little bit, what does the strength piece look like?
So I think we start with talent first. And talent is a naturally reoccurring pattern of thought, feeling, and behavior. So if you're somebody who loves communicating, whether that be in the written word or the verbal or pictures, you have a natural talent. You are drawn to doing that. And the more that we invest in it and practice and add knowledge, skill, and experience to it, then it becomes a strength. So one of mine, as an example, is activator. So I'm just somebody who's fairly impatient. I love getting moving. I love getting groups moving. There's a theme throughout my book of taking action, little steps, but taking some sort of action. So I try to inspire and nudge other people to take action. That's a talent that I've got. At school, my school report said Charlotte talks too much. Now, that's something that I've got.
I had that too. I think we're very similar. Like, I don't want to be like an echo chamber here, but I'm identifying in myself. I call my action bias. Yep. That's my thing. Yep. I feel like that's where I feel like I'm most at ease with what I'm doing, and I can help others in that way as well. That's definitely my alignment piece.
Yeah.
Is doing.
Yeah. It's a natural thing. Now, sometimes these strengths can get us in trouble. They can become our weaknesses, like talking too much or pushing people too hard. But there are assessments out there you can take, whether it be Marcus Buckham's Stand Up or Gallup's Clifton Strengths, or you just look for little talents. But I think they're different to skills. I think they're different to values. There are lots of different assessments out there, like Herman Brain looks at how you think, and things like Myers-Briggs and DISC look at personality. But I think your strengths come back to that, how you naturally think, feel, and behave. And then, kind of how do we fine tune those so that they're helping us, not hindering us?
It leads into my next question. Of course, not everyone's made for things like corporate life or even running a business. There's that kind of idea, oh, well, you should start your own thing if you're not happy at work. It's not everyone's bag, right? My husband's definitely not that person. I'm the entrepreneur. He would rather move jobs than necessarily start his own business. How can you guide people to find out what's best for them at a certain time in their life? And of course, some ways get there quicker because obviously time is money, but also you don't want people to sort of, I guess, meander and not necessarily find where they should be too late, because I think people sometimes then just get even more stuck if they don't feel like it's working for them.
Yeah, correct. I mean, your other question about how do you get unstuck, I mean, I think one of the other things is about finding mentors and a kind of tribe that's going to support you. And one of those may well be a coach. Again, it might sound like I'm biased here because I am a coach, but I have a coach. I had a coach to help me write the book. I had a book writing coach. I
love this. The coach's coach has a coach.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, correct. So I think everybody needs a coach if you feel stuck, because they're good at holding up the mirror. They're good at, digging into the unsaid. They help you sort of, challenge by asking some questions and get you to sort of think and reflect. And yes, if they're a mentor as well or a consultant, they might give you sort of tips and advice. But kind of coming back to this piece about running your own business, it's funny. I remember my husband, when I was at this stuck stage in my own career, saying, well, why don't you start your own business? And I was like, no, I'm a corporate beast. I'd lived in big corporates all my life. I'm never going to start my own business. And it wasn't until we sort of set up in partnership. I'm on my own now, but we set up in partnership initially. I couldn't imagine going back now, quite honestly, Amber.
Yeah, I call myself unemployable because I've done my own thing longer than I've been in incarnations of my own business. I've had a couple of businesses for 16 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's longer than I worked for anybody.
Yeah. So, I think it's a case of testing the water. I mean, that was one of the other sort of chapters in the book. And one of those tips about how do you get unstuck is test the water. And a coach or mentor might help you do that. Dip the toe in, see what's going on. If you want to jump full in, that's great too. But if you go, well, do I want to run my business? It doesn't need to be expensive to get a business, up and running. I think people visualize that, I've got to get investment and I need all these systems. And it's like, you don't if you're a sole trader. And it depends what type of business you have, right? Like if you're service-based or you're like products. And of course, if you want to scale globally, there's all those pieces to it. So that doesn't necessarily float everyone's boat. No, but I was walking the dogs yesterday with my son, and he's just left university and was talking about, he believes his circle of friends and generations don't think that they want to go into corporate life, but he's not experienced it. So how does he know yet? He says, no, we want a bit more flexibility and freedom, and he's looking at studying in the animation space, and maybe that's more boutique things. But I do believe in sort of testing the water and seeing, but having mentors and coaches to help guide you. Like, I didn't know I wanted to be a coach and facilitator until I had a mentor in that area. And the more I found out, the more I loved it, and the more I kind of grew and wanted to know even more. But if you'd asked me a year before, could you imagine yourself being a coach and facilitator? I'd be like, what do they do? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that timing is everything. Like, just even hearing you talk about your son, but also yourself, like, sometimes, you can't imagine. I never planned to run my own business. It's not like I come from an entrepreneurial family at all. My dad was an academic and my mother worked in admin, and I didn't grow up with that kind of, influence, but certainly I've grown into it. And I think it's worked for where I'm at with my life, with my children, and all the flexibility that I need and want. So that's sort of how I've recalibrated my view on it. It's not something like I was born to run a business. It's certainly not like that for me.
Yeah, and I wonder how many people are doing what they studied at university, as an example. How many people are, like, coming back to your first question, how many people are doing what they wanted to be when they grew up? And there's a lot of people that have lots of different jobs, careers in them. And you're dead right. It depends on your life
even
stage.
As I call them, Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did my corporate shtick. It's in there. And do you know what? It actually does serve me now because a lot of my clients are corporates and I understand where they're at, I understand their time constraints, I understand, how they need to be communicated with. All those pieces have actually really helped me as well. So it's not a waste of time, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, correct. And I think the fundamental question is, are you happy doing what you're doing? Is there more? Do you think, I wish I could, I wish I did, I would love to? Well, explore what those things could be. Don't regret the things you haven't done.
Exactly. The idea of a cheer squad is interesting. Why do we need this for success, do you think, as we're kind of navigating our career and maybe having various incarnations and changes and getting unstuck?
Yeah, again, similar to, where a coach might help support you and ask you questions. Mentors are great ways of also holding up the mirror, asking you great questions. Cheer squad, whether that be like my husband or my whole family are amazing cheer squad in terms of my business, writing the book. I think we cheer squad each other. So I think having a cheer squad at home that's there to support you and back you. When I did start my own business, my husband was 100% behind me, and we had a little bit of a, fallback money if needed. Having those mentors is really useful. But I think it is important to have a pick and mix, like be it formal, informal, friends, people that you can reach out to. I think a number of people fear reaching out and asking for help. They might say no, or they're too busy. I think by the other token, sometimes people can reach out a lot and say, "Oh, can I pick your brains?" Well, I could spend all day with people that would reach out and say, "Oh, can I just pick your brains on this? How did you go about doing that?" So there is something in there about be prepared to sort of pay some of your cheer squad. Like I'm a beekeeper on the side, and I 100% pay my bee mentor to come along and help me initially when we got started, help check the bees and understand what I'm doing. And he's giving his time. I expect to kind of pay for that time. It doesn't need to be a huge amount.
Yeah, I agree.
Recognition.
Just because you love what you do doesn't mean you should do it for free, right?
Correct. Correct.
It's favors and coffees and picking your brain. I understand. I've learnt the hard way why that's sometimes not so fruitful.
Yeah. So, if you're going to have a cheer squad, don't expect that everybody's going to willingly give that for free. I think there needs to be some sort of fair exchange, whatever that looks like for that other person and giving back. But I think really the cheer squad is just people behind you saying, "You've got this, you can do this." Help build your confidence as well. If you are having any of those limiting beliefs or those imposter syndromes, they're the people that will go, "Yeah, you are pretty good at this," or "Yes, you can do this," or "Yes, we can help you." So I think it's critical, and I think the more you can sort of reach out and say, "Can you help me in this area?" but being mindful that you may need to pay for it as well. You don't ask, you don't get.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100% from my own experience. What's your favorite business tool at the moment? It could be as simple as an app or, something that you do in your business or your daily life. And how has it helped you?
Well, we touched on the first one. I think my initial response to this would be a coach. I think having a coach is critical, but we sort of talked about that. But I wished a lot of the apps that I had were all integrated into one, because I feel like I have so many apps. I think one of the other ones that's really helped me and that I love, and I think maybe you used it as well, is Calendly. That's one of my favorites, so that people can just look and see.
Yeah, that's changed my life.
Yeah.
It's such a simple thing in some ways. I'm like, it's like a Post-it note 40 years ago. Why didn't I think of that? I'd be a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
But the idea that, I don't even these podcasts, when I did this 7 years ago, I don't even know if Calendly existed. I didn't know about it. You'd be back and forth. These are the dates I'm available this time. And then the time they got back to you, I'm sorry, that's not available now. That's been booked.
Yep.
Oh, you're in Queensland time. There'd be all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And there would just be 5 emails to book one podcast.
Correct. So I think we're both of us being time efficient activator people. It's like one of those good things. You just go, here we are. This is when I'm free. Book it in. Boom. Time saved.
Yep. And I just block it out if I can't. And likewise, I expect other people to do that for me as well.
Right.
Your biggest life lesson so far and why?
Biggest life lesson is absolutely advice from my mother. It was, what's the worst that can happen? So to me, it's about being bold and giving it a go and jumping in. Because really, what is the worst that's going to happen? Whether, we moved from the UK to Australia with the whole family when they were younger. A lot of people say, oh my gosh, that's a really big, bold move, but I'm really glad I did it. Changing careers, there were some, bold moves there as well. Sometimes it's about asking that question as well. So I think my biggest life lesson came from my mother of what's the worst can happen. The other thing she used to say that I've already mentioned is you don't ask, you don't get. So I think they're two lessons probably from my mother.
Yeah, and it's sort of like tried and true advice, isn't it? But I think it's good, that simplicity, and if you can hear someone's voice in your head that you love and respect, it often can guide you into, do I do this thing or do I not? And that's it. It's kind of like quite binary in that sense. Well, how do you define success these days?
For me personally,
yes.
These days, that's a good add-on there.
I think it's important to add that in there because what looks, I know for me, most of the people I speak to, what success looked like in your 20s, the fast car, the big pay packet, the nice job title, all that stuff, isn't always the things as we get older and mature that we value and how we define success for ourselves. So I'm just curious to know where you're at and how you look at yourself, particularly when we're talking about wanting more 10 out of 10 days than not.
Yeah, it does come back to that. Do I love what I'm doing, or am I fulfilled, energized by what I'm doing? Am I getting closer to those 10 and 10s? Now, 10 out of 10's utopia. A lot of people might go, well, I never give anything out of 10. It might be a 9.5. There's always room for improvement, but is the number where you would like it to be? So for me, success is if every day my kids ask me that question, I've got a week that is over 8 out of 10 each day type of thing. It might be one day's a 8, another day's a 9. But if I'm getting lots of those bad days, and I haven't had one for years, that is what I would class as success. I mean, yes, you're right. I've got a nice house, paid off my mortgage, touch wood, where family's great, healthy, kids are good. So, that's other element of success. It might look different if that was an issue. But for me, thinking about, am I enjoying what I'm doing? The same at weekends, have I had a productive
social
weekend?
life as well.
Yeah, loving doing what I'm doing. Am I enjoying potting around the garden, walking the dogs, making out with friends? And it kind of comes back to some of those goals, like what is the goal and the plan that I've set out for myself, and am I achieving that? And I think this comes back to, well, maybe purpose. What do you want to be doing? Are you doing more of that? Whether that be spending time with the kids, going to the gym, having time to do my paddle boarding, whatever that looks like. Are you able to achieve that where you are now based on, your career and your life? So I think it comes back to your goals and your plans.
I like that. A final message for us on the politics of career changes.
Well, I don't think you have to change your career. It could be a case of you could job craft to achieve more of the things that you like doing at work. So coming back to ask yourself the question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love, what do you get paid to do? What little tweaks and changes can you make around that? And if you don't like the number, then think on that. Can I job craft? Is there a side hustle? Maybe I could give back to my school and my community, but have a bold conversation with yourself and, have a conversation with other people, but fundamentally take some action.
Absolutely. Such a great conversation. Lots for people to marinate there. If you do want to connect further with Charlotte, of course, there's some details on the show notes. Until next time, take care. Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests. So if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.